Coming up in today's podcast.
That at the same time, you would also be doing charity work through the RRT for the homeless. It would seem at odds of leaving empty properties that you've purchased and then giving food boxes for the local people, local area. Just a very strange oddity. And it just, to me, just seems at odds with running a charity in the rapid relief team that supports the homeless while having a stock of a portfolio of properties that are empty. In reality, if this was Bruce Hales Limited, Australia, it would be Australia's second biggest company.
My question is this. If RRT really cares, why not start a bit closer to home and start looking into things that should never, ever have happened and should never, ever have been covered up and still continue to be covered up to this day?
Welcome to the Get a Life podcast. Explore survivor stories. Uncover the hidden truths. Join our X-Called conversations. You matter, and so does your story.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Get a Life podcast. I'm Cheryl Hope, and today with me is Richard Marsh and Damian Hastie. Richard and I are ex-members of the Exclusive Brethren, now known as the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And Damian is the genius behind unraveling the dark web this sect weaves. Welcome, guys. We are back here again to talk about the fake charity arm of this cult called the Rapid Relief Team. And I want to do a quick dive into Damian's website, Brethren Exposed, and answer questions that we get regarding his new business and charity section. But first, today, we are exposing a recent story that should make every government agency and charity partner stop and think about the Rapid Relief Team. Just this week, the Sunday Post revealed that the police are now reviewing their partnership with the Rapid Relief Team. That review is long overdue, and it raises the bigger question: why are institutions aligning themselves with an organization built on secrecy, exploitation, homophobia, and control in the first place? At the same time, Brethren Exposed has uncovered how this group is quietly buying up properties around their London meeting room in Swanley, spending over £1 million on homes that sit empty and deteriorating, while local families are left surrounded by decay. So while the Brethren want the world to see them handing out food boxes and disaster relief, the reality is very different. Property hoarding, secrecy and planning applications, and a strategy of expansion that has nothing to do with charity and everything to do with control. In this episode, we'll pull these threads together and ask the hard questions that too many are avoiding. If the police are finally reviewing their partnership in Scotland, maybe it's time everyone else did too. Make sure to stay to the end of this podcast for more PBCC survivors speaking out on their thoughts on the RRT. Let's drop right into this article from the Sunday Post.
So this is an article in the Scottish newspaper, the Sunday Post, on 31st of August 2025 by Anna Sava. And the headline is, "Officers Disgusted by Use of Anti-LGBT Beliefs Caterers." Police Scotland is reviewing its use of a controversial church-run catering charity after a backlash from rank-and-file officers over the organisation's anti-LGBT beliefs. Concerns were raised by LGBT officers and others over being fed by Rapid Relief Team, RRT, during Donald Trump's July visit. RRT is a global charity run by volunteers from the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, PBCC, an evangelical subset which condemns homosexuality and same-sex marriage. The Scottish LGBTI Police Staff Association confirmed its members queried the reliance on RRT, which it passed on to Police Scotland. Police Scotland said, "We have been made aware of concerns about the service provided by Rapid Relief Team and are currently carrying out a review of the arrangements. The force declined to respond to claims it made a donation to RRT in exchange for its services. Over the last decade, RRT has served free hot meals and survival packs to emergency services during national deployments in Scotland. This summer, RRT celebrated its biggest ever involvement with Police Scotland, boasting of serving over 6,000 police officers and more than 18,000 meals across sites in Ayrshire, Edinburgh, and Aberdeen during the US presidential visit. In 2022, RRT was commended by the Scottish Parliament for its fantastic work. But there was growing anger that Police Scotland's continued association with RRT flies in the face of the force's own stance on equality and inclusion. One officer who was deployed for the Trump visit said they were disgusted. "I was serviced by this cult with horrific views for a week," said the source, who is part of the police's LGBT community. They added that there was little alternative because officers were sent here, there, and everywhere for the Trump visit, and RRT had pop-up catering stands on site. The row follows media reports from former members of the PBCC who described traumatic experience of cult-like control and alienation. There is a legal obligation under the Equality Act 2010 that requires public bodies to consider the impact of decisions on people with protected characteristics such as sexuality, gender, or race. Fairness in Police Scotland is a legal requirement enforced through its Code of Ethics, standards of professional behaviour, and the public sector equality duty. This summer, Police Scotland celebrated Pride Month by flying the Pride inclusion flag at Police Scotland HQ. Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time that an organisation has decided to cut ties with the RRT, and it usually comes down to their horrific treatment of members who come out as gay or lesbian, who are brutally cut off and thrown out from the cult, and which means, of course, that they're cut off from all their friends and family, and frequently lose their job and their home at the same time. And then there's even more horrific incidents where members who've come out as gay have been fed prescription medication to suppress their sexual urges, as the brethren put it. This is truly horrific stuff, and there's no way that any organization that has a respect for human rights and equality should be partnering with this charity.
Yeah. And I think it was in the UK too, the Fire Brigade Union, they cut their contact with them for the exact same reason. It was over the LGBTQ beliefs of the PBCC.
Yes, exactly. And unfortunately, I mean, that incident was reported in their own internal newsletters and so on, but it never actually made the mainstream press. But it's still online, a very clear declaration and decision by the Fire Brigades Union that they would not use the RRT for their catering services in the UK.
Yeah, and I'll have a link to that article below. You'll see it on your screen right now, but I'll have a link to the article below that you can go through and read what they had come to say at the end of that meeting. Yeah.
I mean, the thing that strikes me about the whole RRT thing, I mean, this goes right back to the Charity Commission issue back in 2012, where the Charity Commission was considering whether the Brethren as a whole should have a charitable status. And the Charity Commission was looking at detriment and harm, the detriment and harm that's caused by the Brethren, and weighing that against the public benefit provided by the Brethren. And the way the Charity Commission looked at it was, well, does the detriment and harm outweigh the public benefit? And that to me is a very perverse way of looking at the issue, because you can't compensate for detriment and harm by setting up some kind of little charity to provide some compensating public benefit. You have to stop the detriment and harm. I mean, to give an analogy, imagine someone is arrested and convicted in court of shoplifting. The convicted person can't say to the judge, well, I'll do 3 days a week litter picking, Your Honor, if you'll let me carry on with the shoplifting for the rest of the week. I mean, it's a logical fallacy. You have to stop the detriment and harm, and then your charitable assistance will be very welcome. But you can't use it as a cover-up, as a means to say, yes, please, we want to be allowed to carry on abusing and mistreating and casting out gay members because we're providing food boxes, or because we're providing packs of diapers to victims of a volcanic eruption in the Caribbean. But yeah, we're going to continue to cut Craig Hoyle off from his family, and we're going to refuse to apologize to him for the horrific treatment we meted out on him in New Zealand. It doesn't work like that.
It is charity washing, isn't it? In every aspect, you whether that is giving homeless charities food boxes whilst simultaneously buying up properties that you leave empty for a number of years. Everything is, as Richard says, it's charity washing, basically. We are paying back a certain aspect for the treatment of the ex-members that were gay. We are giving some burgers, some of our signature burgers out, food boxes out. It's ridiculous, really, if you consider it.
And it's also quite targeted. I mean, what we're observing is that if there's an area where the PBCC has come under particular criticism, they will direct their charity hosepipe at something that counters that criticism. So, particularly in the area of mental health, where, of course, they're very strongly criticized for the huge trauma that ex-members experience. And ex-members, will spend years in therapy, psychotherapy, to get over the traumas inflicted on them by this organization. So they will then very cynically turn around and make a big splash about setting up a burger tent at Are You OK, which is a mental health charity, and donating food boxes to, mental health charities around the world. It's a kind of a big can of paint, and wherever some ugly scene kind of appears, they rush around with their big can of red RRT paint and hastily paint over the patch with some charitable donations that would seem to counter the narrative that's coming from former members or is coming from the press.
I had this conversation last night with a group of people on trying to help them understand that just because there are kind people inside the PBCC that do good deeds doesn't give them the right for anybody to deny what's actually going on in there. So just because someone does a good deed doesn't make it okay to have children being sexually abused inside a sect. It doesn't match. You cannot say because these people do good deeds, then we shouldn't clump them all together. No, this is a moving unit. The PBCC move in a single unit. Yes, they're brainwashed inside. Everybody has the capability to make decisions for themselves, even when you're brainwashed. And I know that's a complete contradiction on itself, but if nobody was able to see through this, we wouldn't have ex-members. So there is the capacity to make a choice. Every member inside there has the capacity to make a choice and say no and stand firm because of the things that are going in there. And same for people that are on the outside that are watching these good deeds happen. Then I get back to me being like, well, you know what? Well, they did this for us. So, we can't really clump everybody together and that this is just this single issue. No, I am clumping this all together and saying everybody is responsible in there to either speak up and say no, or you're going to move along with the sheep. right? So when you turn a blind eye to what is going on inside there and think because you serve with RRT that it washes that away, it doesn't. There are still children being abused in there. There are still people being denied their true identity in there. And because that goes on, if you are in there and you're following that, you are enabling the situation. So no amount of RRT, red tents, no amount of any good deed that's going on does not equal the amount of abuse that is coming on in there. They are just using this to cover up what's happening in there. And we see in the video, so they did a video on YouTube after this whole Scotland thing. And this is the video.
If we had gone by what the email said, this would have been the same as any other RRT event. But what was the scale of this particular operation? The opportunity to support Police Scotland on such a major event started with that simple email. Follow-up conversations revealed quite quickly just how large this event was going to be. We were told it was potentially even the biggest policing operation Police Scotland themselves had ever undertaken. Working through the numbers they were talking about, 6,000 police officers, 20 to 30,000 welfare packs, 30,000 plus meals potentially. We realised very quickly this was also going to be RRT's biggest ever deployment. That in itself raised a whole lot of new challenges. With all the numbers we were looking at, it ended up we needed to plan for about 30,000 meals across 6 different locations across 10 days, serving for 3 shifts in each day. It became clear that Police Scotland were required to swell the numbers of police officers in the area for the duration of the visit of the President of the United States of America. At RRT though, we were clear. Our focus remained, and it still remains, on helping our police officers do what they do best in maintaining law and order on the streets of the United Kingdom. For this particular operation, given the work that some of the police officers were going to be doing, they asked could we make a custom welfare pack just for this operation. The idea of the pack was to give officers everything they'd need for a 12-hour deployment, make sure they were kept comfortable, protected, and had backup high protein, high energy food and a couple of bottles of water so they didn't run short when they're out on shift. RRT globally is committed to putting care and compassion in action. Of our 4 core pillars of support, emergency services is just one area, and this operation is a great way of demonstrating just what it means. When our emergency services need us, we're able to mobilise volunteers, we're able to deploy, we're able to step up, and we are able to put care and compassion, in this case for our police officers, in action through a 10-day operation.
And then you do something on this scale, and you realise that you're serving thousands of people in a day, and you realise that this is what it's all about. From a volunteer perspective, they're giving up their time, yep, which is completely voluntary, but this is a feeling that you're not going to get any other way. I think this is what RRT is all about. It's care and compassion to all, and we're supporting the emergency services and the wonderful work that they do.
Rapid relief has been really great for us here because we've had very long days for this visit and long hours, and a lot of the police, the military, the agents that are here have benefited from having the services that you all have provided, and we've been able to eat and drink and get some relief from a long day of work. So it is very much appreciated, and we really look forward to working with you again in the future. Thank you so much.
Bringing all of that together, this event was unquestionably a successful operation, and it was an honour to support Police Scotland at such a key moment in their requirements.
So in this video, you see them really driving home the care and compassion. Over and over you hear him saying, he uses those 2 words, care and compassion, because those are the key words of the rapid relief team. The thing is that how many ex-members can come on here and say they have received care and compassion from the rapid relief team or the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church? I guarantee you 99.9% of the people, if you were to go and ask them, do not receive this kind of care and compassion from the Rapid Relief Team. These are people that have been branded with their own trauma. And Lindy said it really good in her video that was on the last podcast about they put out all of this branding of the water bottles, branding of the burgers. It's branding. But what have they done with the ex-members that have been branded with the trauma from being a part of the PBCC? Nothing.
I mean, one of the most egregious cases of their charity washing was in your very own history, Cheryl, where you after many years you had the courage to finally come forward and put out your horrific story of abuse from the youngest childhood at the hands of Alan Drever, and then that got picked up by Canadaland and became very public, and Canadaland made a very public mainstream article speaking about the terrible sexual abuse allegations in Maple Creek with Alan Drever. And then a few months later, the Rapid Relief Team in Maple Creek dresses Alan Drever, your perpetrator, up in a Rapid Relief Team hat and uniform and sets him up in a little stall by the road, handing out bottled water as a kind of a giving you the finger and saying to the town of Maple Creek, yes, he's a good guy. He's one of us. Look, here he is handing out bottled water. This isn't the kind of guy that would molest children, is it? I mean, the cynical way that they did that really made me angry. Yeah.
And so when we talk about when they drive this care and compassion home, instead of them plopping Alan Drever on Main Street for everybody to see, they should have given me a phone call and said, oh, you know what? We weren't aware of this. You know, they knew I did a police report. I had given them information prior to this. I waited 3 months for a response from somebody in there. I never got one. That's when I went to the police. But I guess this whole care and compassion and action that they have is given to people that is going to benefit their image. It is not benefiting their backyard. It benefits their window that they want everybody to look into.
It isn't just the hypocrisy of the care and compassion and how the PR bit. There is a underlying concern that I've had for quite a while around the Rapid Relief Team. And if we use all the money that's been raised for food boxes in Ukraine, for example, I struggle with the fact that everywhere Rapid Relief Team operates, there seems to then be government contracts that are awarded to Plymouth Brethren members' companies and usually related closely to the Hales family. So if you take Ukraine, for example, CMT, which is a business in Kent in the UK that's owned by Anthony Hazel and Greg Hales, that business has won multi-million-pound contracts to supply generators into Ukraine. And if you look at another business that's been set up in Poland, so there is a Brethren member company in Poland called Coordinate Polska, which obviously works with the Polish government and the Ukraine government to supply into Ukraine. So you've not just got the PR side of charity washing. I genuinely believe, my own personal belief, that they also see the opportunity. So when I'm looking at Police Scotland and I see the article in the Sunday Post, I find it almost amazing that within 2 days, there's another article in the Herald, which is the same company as the Sunday Post, I believe, saying how the police force uniforms are not of a very good quality and that there are numerous complaints coming in. And I'm thinking, so the company that supplies all the uniforms currently isn't a Brethren company. But this number of complaints around the police force in Scotland saying that different elements of their uniform is not fit for purpose makes me wonder if this contract is then going to come up again. And there is brethren companies that absolutely fit the part for that. So I will be watching if that contract is retendered to see who does win that contract. But there's no evidence currently that they are winning contracts with Police Scotland or even the fire brigade in Scotland. But there is other elements across the UK where Rapid Relief Team have run events, and then you see that their members' companies have also won contracts to supply these same authorities, whether that be the police, fire, ambulance, NHS contracts. So to me, it isn't just about PR. And the other bit that absolutely, I find the level of hypocrisy, and I can't understand this if I was inside the Brethren to not be able to see this. So I can go and serve a signature burger to the police force in Ayrshire, in Aberdeenshire, in Edinburgh, when Donald Trump is in town. Yet the real public service that was done at that event was by the police force, who were guarding everyone. Absolutely. But you will never see a Brethren member in the police force. You will not see a Brethren member being a public servant. In reality, you could argue that all those people inside that are working for the Rapid Relief Team as volunteers, in reality, that's almost, it's a modern day slavery. Have they really a choice? I would ask the question to somebody inside, what happens if you actively decided you did not want to volunteer for Rapid Relief Team? What would happen to you and your family? And for me, it isn't just about the PR. There's that hypocrisy, and there's also the links to future business awards. And to me there, I don't think when Rapid Relief Team was set up on the sort of demand by the Charity Commission, which I agree with Richard, was a bizarre approach to as a resolution. I don't think it was set up with the view that we are going to win contracts. I think it has become the added benefit, but the hypocrisy has always been there, that Brethren members can't serve as a policeman, policewoman, they can't serve in the fire brigade, they can't serve in the ambulance service. There are numerous jobs that they cannot pursue. And in reality, the only public service that members of the Plymouth Brethren give to everybody in the world, in each country they operate, is the Rapid Relief Team. That is their only public service they provide.
Mm-hmm. And you hear in that video that they, again, drive home, that, all the members there are there voluntary. Like, they really have to drive home aspects of their videos that you normally wouldn't see in a normal charity video, right? Because so many people are calling out so many of these aspects that you're talking about, Damian, that they have to go back into their videos and start reaffirming that they're not doing these things, right? And it is really sad. And I mean, even right down to, like, they're handing out welfare packs to the police officers to carry around. Like, it's just, I guess, so hypocritical with how they do things when we know what is really going on in behind the scenes. So that's why we've been really pushing out all these RRT podcasts right now, is we want to drive home what is happening, really what is happening underneath those red tents. Because it's not at all what you think. One hand is reaching for the contracts, while one hand is feeding this care and compassion, right? They know exactly what they're doing now. And I agree too that they didn't initially start RRT for what it is today. Again, the PBCC never started as what it is today, right? We get these people that are invested in multimillionaire houses and money coming in left, right, and center. I mean, Bruce Hales is just money hungry. That's what he's there for. He is not there for the respect, care, and compassion of your soul. He's there to fill his pocketbook. He is there to collect your money. And he puts on masks after masks after masks, whatever mask he needs to wear to convince you to come forward and hand over your money and your time. He knows how to put that on. He is a smooth operator businessman.
And just going back to what you were saying, Damian, I mean, the brethren are very, very clearly disaster capitalists. I mean, the COVID pandemic was the prime example of that. The Ukraine war is an example. Anywhere there's a disaster, the brethren are there. You know, they're ambulance chasers. And of course, the Rapid Relief Team, which is largely or very publicly a disaster relief organization, is the perfect way to get into those situations. I mean, it's a very clever way to get right onto the front line of a disaster, by starting with a charity spearhead and then working out from that to the contracts.
I think from the Rapid Relief Team is the document that Cheryl will share, the bit that every locality is to engage with a person of influence or status at a local level, and that's copyright UBT marketing. I mean, that is a PR operation, isn't it? I can't think of many charities that would issue that every area of their business, every area of their charity is to try and win over a person of influence at a local level. I know that in the UK, for example, the Rapid Relief Team are invited to all the emergency local regional planning events and to be included in there, which for some of the UK's leading experts on emergency planning, they kind of scratch their heads of why the Rapid Relief Team are involved and why they get this automatic call to be included. And I think it's purely probably off the back of that every locality is engaging with somebody of influence. I've pictures of within Scotland, for example, the MSP that would have covered the Donald Trump golf club location just to the north of Aberdeen. I've got pictures of RRT with that MSP.
MSP is the member of the Scottish Parliament. Right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So the MSP, the member of the Scottish Parliament for the area that Donald Trump's golf course is sited in Aberdeen, I've pictures of her with two members of the local RRT from probably a couple of years ago, just at the time that they were actually putting in their planning application for a new meeting room in Ellen, which is literally a stone's throw from the Donald Trump's golf course.
Wow. And I want to just reiterate to the viewers and listeners that I know that there's probably a lot of insiders in there that love to do this charity work, right? That it makes them feel good because they don't get to see really or interact, especially the females don't get to interact with the public the way that they probably get to do during an RRT event. And I don't want to negate anybody who takes joy in this inside there, but there are a lot of people that don't want to do these and don't have a choice. And that's another issue I have with them, is being voluntold that you need to do this and then saying on videos that everybody volunteered. That's not true. That's not true. I wouldn't get the emails and the messages I get of being voluntold to do a RRT event and not having a choice about it. Yeah.
There was a very interesting message from an insider, and he was recalling the early days of the RRT, and at their local level they'd partnered with a food bank, and they were going along and donating food and helping out, but it was a very low profile operation. And then their local RRT got overridden by the national RRT, with a new communication that said, in future, we will not be doing any operations that do not have potential for media and press. So in other words, if the cameras are not going to be there, don't do it. And this insider said it was really embarrassing because how do they explain to this food bank that they'd been working with that they were no longer going to help them? And I mean, this comes up with well, why were they so focused on this Donald Trump event in Scotland? And the answer is because where the president of the USA goes, there's an absolute maximum concentration of press and cameras and mainstream media, international mainstream media. That's why they put so much effort into the Donald Trump visit, because it was the perfect opportunity to get a huge amount of media coverage onto the RRT.
So we have some invoices here from RRT New Zealand. I'm going to let you go ahead, Richard, and explain to our listeners and viewers what you have here.
So in the article about this Scottish police force operation, there was one line that really stood out to me, and that was, the force declined to respond to claims it made a donation to RRT in exchange for its services. Now, this is something that we've seen happening a lot recently. In fact, you could say it's the preferred MO of the RRT, and that is that they will often act not as a charity, but simply as a government contractor. And we found a very interesting example of this online in regard to the RRT's response to Cyclone Gabriel in New Zealand, where they were very active with a huge scheme to provide fencing, which it turned out was firstly funded by the government, and secondly, that the fencing was purchased from an exclusive brethren business. So what they were trumpeting as being a multi-million-dollar charitable donation was in fact a simple commercial transaction that benefited brethren businesses in a profitable way. But the other documents that came up in connection with Cyclone Gabriel in New Zealand were ones that came up from a freedom of information request. And it turns out that one of the operations they did immediately in the aftermath of Cyclone Gabriel was to helicopter and fly supplies and RRT boxes into a region of New Zealand called Wairoa and Hawke's Bay. And what this freedom of information turned up was a whole series of invoices from the Rapid Relief Team to the Wairoa District Council, which covered a large proportion of the supplies and services that the RRT had provided in that area. So just quickly running through these invoices, the first one is for plane hire to transport welfare supplies, and that's an invoice for $49,162. The next one is for RRT food boxes, $50 each, $66,300 invoice for food boxes, and $8,000 invoiced for the Fresh Start Care Kit, for a total of $85,445. The next one is also for food boxes, non-standard food boxes to Tauranga and Wairoa via helicopter, $11,400 invoice to the council. The next one is RRT event establishment fee reactive Wairoa floods, $300. Sausage, sandwich, bacon and egg roll with drink, total of $22,500.
Wow.
RRT signature burger with drink at $16 each, a total of $40,000. And then they've put in a goodwill credit back to food costs of $46,000, but it still totals $18,904 charged to the Wairoa District Council. So, I mean, to be fair, they credited back some of the costs
Yeah.
of the food on that particular invoice. The next invoice is for helicopter hire to Wairoa, 21,675, and then a Black Hawk helicopter hire of 17,510 for a total of 45,062. And then there's baby nappies for 1,120, another consignment of baby nappies for 3,308, and liners and pads for 3,859.20 for a total of $9,531. You know, I mean, the RRT certainly did some excellent work in New Zealand, but when you look into it, a lot of the stuff that they're taking credit for, in fact, they're simply working as government contractors. The government, the local governments or emergency response services are purchasing these food boxes, and you know, even if RRT transport them, they're invoicing those transport costs back to the local government. So, you know, there just needs to be a little more transparency around these things, because, you know, we're very happy for the RRT to take credit for where they do genuinely make a donation, but it's a little deceitful to blow the trumpet loudly about projects where they're simply getting paid to do what they do. And of course, that the money they make on it is not going back to their, you know, their volunteer workers who are, you know, really have no option but to go along and do what they're told. And so, yes, I think it would be very interesting to see how the story develops, but I think it's highly likely that the Scottish police force, in fact, paid for some or possibly all of the catering services that the RRT supplied, probably with the exception of the so-called volunteer labour that was put into it.
Recently, I can't remember the reason why, but I started looking at the Manor Gospel Trust, which is a meeting room gospel hall trust down in the London, Kent area in the UK. And I was obviously interested in this because of the amount of money that has revolved around the London meeting room and the donations that have been done. And in the UK, you will see on the accounts that there is at the bottom here their residential title deeds and their land title deeds. So these are properties and land that are owned by the Gospel Hall Trust. And just out of curiosity, I decided to look at what houses they owned, because in the UK you can, for free, search these title numbers and find out where they are. And it was at this point that I realised that next to the Leyden Hatch Lane meeting room, which is the major London meeting room in the UK, that they owned 4 properties. One of them they've owned for quite a while and isn't unusual in the fact that the property is next door or adjacent to the entrance to the meeting room. And that's quite a common occurrence, that the property next to the entrance to a meeting room is owned by the Brethren. However, the other 3 were very interesting because they weren't detached properties. They were properties that have been purchased since 2018 through until 2023, a row of 4 terraced houses. Then 4 terraced houses, they'd purchased number 1, number 3, and number 4. And they'd purchased them over, as I say, over a period of 5 years. And I had a quick look on Google Street Maps and Google Earth just to see what the properties look like. And what became quite clear is that the properties were empty. They were not detached properties. It was a row of terrace. And that they were in a considerable state of neglect, that you could see the gardens were overgrown, that there was deterioration on the roof of one of the properties, and you could see that the properties were not being kept. what I also found alarming was that each property had been purchased at quite a different price. Number one seemed to be larger and include a bit more land, so you would expect that to be the most expensive. But number four also included land, and that had been the cheapest. But altogether, these three properties had cost over £1 million. And number two seemed to be occupied by, well, I know it's occupied by an elderly couple that are not brethren. So it seems to me quite clear that the long-term view of that gospel trust is to buy the remaining property at some point in the future and use that for redevelopment. I just found it kind of unusual that in the very same area that you've got three properties that you are leaving empty and leaving in a state of neglect in the Leyden Hatch area, which comes under Swanley Borough Council, that at the same time you would also be doing charity work through the RRT for the homeless. It would seem at odds of leaving empty properties that you've purchased and then giving food boxes for the local people, local area. Just a very strange oddity. Now, whether they have done this in other areas would need an awful lot of research to go through all the different gospel trusts. But I know a lot of the gospel trusts tend to buy properties with a view of development. You can see properties that have been on gospel hall trusts, residential properties that eventually become sites for meeting rooms or adjacent to meeting rooms. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is other examples out there, not just in the UK, but in other areas. And it just, to me, just seems at odds with running a charity in the rapid relief team that supports the homeless while having a stock of a portfolio of properties that are empty.
Yeah, it's a little bit hypocritical, isn't it?
I mean, why do you think they would leave those three properties empty rather than renting them out to tenants while they await, purchasing the last property? Do you think there's a kind of an attempt to coerce the last house that's still, the last owner's still remaining in that row to sell up by making it an unattractive or uncomfortable area, having dilapidated properties next door?
I think that if I was the family of that elderly couple, which I know they do have children, grown-up children, I'd be quite disappointed in the fact that that is going to possibly impact on the price of the property when sadly the parents aren't living there. I also think if I was in that property, it's not a great way to live, is it? It's the properties around you are not in a great condition. You really wouldn't want people coming visiting if it looks all run down. So I don't think due consideration has been given to that. It doesn't take a lot to maintain the gardens and the buildings, but as to why they haven't rented them out, possibly the fact that at some time then they would need to issue notice to leave the properties to tenants, the fact that they couldn't use them because they are not detached properties, they can't use them for their own reverend members. But I do think there is other options that they could consider, whether that is, if you are a charity that does good work within the local community, I'm pretty sure you could have come up with a use for them other free properties that would have helped. And to me, leaving them empty over a number of years, and I believe because they're owned by a charity, I don't know the exact rules because I'm not an expert on this, but it has been suggested to me that by leaving them empty as a charity, that they pay very little in costs, taxes,
Wow.
etc.
Yeah, they probably get an almost a very large discount on the property tax they would otherwise pay if they're empty. But I mean, it does seem to me a very plausible explanation that it's a very cynical ploy to devalue the final
Yeah.
property that they are obviously intending to ultimately purchase, which is a very sad thing to do, in my opinion.
And I think to me, there's one other issue as well within that, is that if you are in a community where the brethren are looking to site a new meeting room, there may not be anything in the planning application that says we are going to look to expand the area that this meeting room covers in the future. So actually, it has, to me, there's a knock on there that actually, if the brethren are building a new meeting room and they're going through a planning stage, actually, how do local residents not know that it is possible that in the future that they may want to purchase their properties, to knock them down for development of a new detached property, or even, is in this case, I believe it is more likely that they want to extend their car park. There was
Yes. Yeah.
there was a planning application for the land just adjacent to the number 4 of the properties to extend their car park.
I mean, when I was in the Brethren, I was quite involved in the planning for the Cambridge meeting room, which is, it's a long time ago now, but the Brethren's strategy on meeting room planning is very much to get is like a thin end of the wedge policy. And one of the issues is that Brethren typically require huge amounts of parking for their big meeting halls because they don't use public transport and they don't use bicycles to go to the meeting. And councils will very typically have sort of guidelines on, well, it's this size hall, so you need this much parking. And of course, the Brethren also don't admit the capacity of their halls. So they'll put up halls that have a capacity of 2,000 by the way they do the seating, which is filling all the aisles and the fire exits and the foyer, the lobby area with loose chairs. They get 2,000 into a hall, but on their planning application, they will say it's a hall for maximum capacity 750 or even smaller numbers. And then, of course, the giveaway on the planning application is that they've got this vast area of parking, which is obviously intended for much larger numbers than 750. And there's 2 ways they get round that. One is they make the parking spaces grossly oversized, so it looks like, 200 parking spaces, but actually you can get 300 cars there, because when they paint the lines, they're actually painting standard width parking spaces, whereas on the plan, all the parking spaces are kind of disabled width. But the other way they get round it is that they will build the hall and the parking area to specification, and then at a later stage when all the attention's off it, they'll put in an application to add extra parking space. And it's often, I mean, in the case of the Cambridge meeting hall, they did it with what they call grasscrete blocks. So it's like concrete blocks with grass growing through them in the holes in the block. So it looks like grass. And typically an application just to increase the amount of parking will get passed by the planning officer without even reference to the council. So there's a very deliberate strategy from day one to put in an application with the intention at a later date, or even during the course of construction, they will apply to amend the plans once they've got the permission. But the intention is always to put in with the biggest footprint they think they'll get permission for, and then to expand on that footprint at a later date, which, it just confirms what you were saying, Damian.
Yeah, the other use it's the use of the wordings as well. And there's a lot of occasionally, or the use of words that are not direct. So actually, if they've got, for example, a meeting room is only used by up to 50 members, but occasionally will be used for more. By using occasionally, how often is occasionally? And there's some very clever wording in these planning permissions, and one of the planning applications, and one of the ones I've seen separate from the Manor Gospel Trust was in Bristol, where there is a meeting room that has car parking for 7 cars, but additionally overflow parking for 5 more, so for 12 cars in total.
Yeah.
The record, according to somebody that I've spoken to that lives close by to that meeting room in Bristol, is they have counted 40 cars in that car park. And some of the things on the planning applications, the Manor Gospel Trust is an interesting one, because that area in Swanley, and a lot of the Kent planning applications are actually made by a company called Fairbank Consulting, which is owned by Paul Reeves. And Paul Reeves is a member of the Brethren in that area. Right. So a lot of the applications that come in that area are coming in from a Brethren member.
Yeah. Interesting.
Wow.
The Brethren Network, the idea behind this was really to understand the size of the Plymouth Brethren, and how really it is a business. With 54,000 members, my estimate is I've picked up currently about 6,650 businesses and charities. It's my belief that there's probably about 10,000. A lot of the ones that are missing are holding companies and investment companies and property companies. Actual trading businesses, I believe I've got in the region of about 90% of them included. And similar with the charities, I believe I've got 95% of the charities included on the Brethren Network. As I say, so one of the major reasons was to show the size and how it has become very much a business. Another reason why I did this was because you can begin to build the connections and show how, for example, 1 in every 18 trading businesses is actually an outfitting business of some kind. So that will redesign offices, doctors' surgeries, dental surgeries, schools, classrooms, etc. So it really starts showing that there is a link between these companies. And I think the third one was probably because obviously I've run Open and Candid for a number of years now, and within that, one of the most common factors for people landing on the website, according to Google Analytics, was people searching for Brethren companies. Now, to me, yes, the Brethren don't own all the companies; it's the members inside that own them. So, to me, I tend to view it as actually as Brethren Incorporated. So everything involved is linked very much back to Mr. Hales and how the Brethren operate. So that's a little bit of background of why I started the Brethren Network. From there, what I want to do is just really show you some of the information that can be provided. So when you land on the home screen, you can search the trading businesses, you can search charities, and you can search by location. And there's a little bit of background in there as well. So each of those would take you directly to the search boxes, or you can use the menu down this side. And within here, we've got what I class as a full search. So that brings up any business or charity, whether it's a trading one, whether it's a holding company, whether it's a meeting room. You can search in a full search. Location search is very much around identifying a city, and I'll cover these again in a minute. And then the trading businesses, which is the same as this, exactly the same there. They are the businesses that people would recognise. So, for example, if you've got a business, All Fasteners, you would be able to search for All Fasteners. But if you were looking for the holding company behind that, you wouldn't find it. You would just find the public-facing All Fasteners. There's a country search where you can search via the countries that the brethren operate in. The recent addition of a people search, which I'm still updating, which I'll cover again in a minute. You can look at all the different meeting rooms. You can look, there's a little bit around Bruce Hales and his family. Another search is just the charities, and then there's sort of the brethren top influencers, probably who I believe are the most important decision makers within the brethren globally. So I'll show you first of all the full search. So if we click on full search here, it takes you to this screen, and the screen will always come up with the first companies in sort of alphabetical order. So you would always see on the full search that this company in Invercargill in New Zealand comes up first, down to Tucson, all the different Tucsons, the Dean Hales companies. So to search, you could literally search anything. So I said All Fasteners before, so we'll look for All Fasteners, and straight away as you type in, it will bring up all the different All Fasteners. So you've got an All Fasteners in Cleveland in the USA, you've got the Australian version, and I'm not sure why it brings Boltcraft up. There must be a link there, which we'll have a look at in a minute. So you're looking for all fasteners in Australia. If you just click onto that button, it will then provide you with further information. It will give you the address details, where you can actually click and get directions to it if you so fancy. You can also look at the business details. So what is it? It's a trading business. It trades as All Fasteners Australia. The actual name of the company is All Fasteners Pty Limited, and it works in the sector of fasteners and construction supplies. And there is a link to the website if you click on that. And then it will bring you up the different key people. So we've got David Strange, Jim Strange, Steve Strange for the Australian version, and also Greg Hales. The reason Greg Hales is included is that you will find that all the All Fasteners sites in Australia always are in the same locations as Greg's company, Smart Access. So the companies always linked together. You'll also see a map there of the companies. From here, you can see any companies that are at this address, and you can also click on the key people. So if you click on Greg Hales, it will bring you up a list of all Greg's companies. Wow. And it will also show you all the people he's connected to. So, for example, he's connected to Anthony Hazel in the UK. And if you wanted to understand how he's connected to Anthony Hazel, it's through the CMT Equipment Limited. So if you clicked on Anthony Hazel, you would see the CMT Equipment again, and you'd also see that he is linked to Greg Hales. So you click back to Greg, and again, you can see all the companies. To go back, you can just click back to the full search, takes you back to the home page, or there is back arrows throughout. So that gives you an overview of what you can do with the full search. Location search is very much around, I'll just reset that. So when you first land on it, you would be able to select a country. So for example, if we select Canada, you'll be able to select one of the states. So if we select, I don't know, we'll select British Columbia. And then it brings you up the cities that are in there. So we've got Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Langley, Surrey and Vancouver. So if we picked Abbotsford, it would bring you up everything that we've got in that area that's on the Brethren network. So you can see the different companies that we've got there. We haven't got the meeting room in Abbotsford. If anyone's got all the details of that, please share, and we will add, of course, because it is important that the Brethren network evolves all the time. It's a living, breathing site which is only updated. Well, it's updated every day, but is only as good as the updates that we put in there. And again, you can see the locations of each of these. Again, you can click on the button and it'll show you the Aramano coffee roasters. And again, if you click on that, it would take you through to the page. So pretty much everything is clickable throughout. So that's the location search. Trading businesses. So all trading business does is remove all the meeting rooms, charities, holding companies, investment companies and property companies, and just picks up anything that is sort of where you would find a website, where you would, that's the company's name that people would recognize as trading. So again, it's very much, you can search, we could search all fasteners again, and it would bring all fasteners up. We could put in a filter though. You can filter if you want to reduce your search and pick a city, a state or a country. So that's the trading businesses. Country search, very straightforward. You just click on the map. So if we want to go and have a look at the UK, for example, we can click on the UK and that brings everything up that's in the UK only. Including meeting rooms and businesses, whether they're trading businesses, holding investment companies, etc. And you can do exactly the same thing to searches through. The latest thing that we've added is called the people search. So the people search is these are everyone that we've listed as key people, and it is one that I do get some questions about. So sometimes I'll get people saying, well, you've missed somebody, they're the key person. To qualify as a key person, I have to have background information showing that's available publicly. So occasionally we might be missing one or two key people, or we might have somebody that you think, well, no, they're not a key person. However, they might be listed as a director of the business or a shareholder of the business. So there's lots of reasons why that could be slightly different from how people see it. So, for example, if we look at a key person, and we'll go for Dean Hales. So we'll look at Dean Hales. And you click on Dean, and again, it'll show you all his businesses and all his connected people. And from the connected people, you could simply go to, for example, Brent Scott in Canada. And again, it'll show you everything that Brent's involved with within. So you can basically play connecting the dots here. If we look, most of these people are some of the senior brethren worldwide, simply because Brent and Dean have both been involved with the Global Advisory Panel. So you will see some of the high-ranking brethren members in there. For example, you click on Glenn Stacey in the UK, one of the UK leaders, you can see everything that he's involved with. One of the things we are working on currently on the people search, and probably best a little bit of a tip here, you can put just the surname in. So if you put Smith, it will bring you up all the Smiths worldwide. And one of the things I'm working on at the moment is identifying where we've got, for example, a common name that's used, there's more than one Andrew Smith. So there might be 5 Andrew Smiths, but actually there's only 2 of them that have got a business that we've picked up on, or has got a trustee of a meeting room. So where we've got that, we're in the process at the moment of splitting them out. So for example, prior to doing this, Andrew Smith would have brought up everything for Andrew Smith in Chesterfield in the UK and Andrew Smith in Hastings in New Zealand. So we are working through these, and that is a work in progress. I'd say probably about 30% of the way through that currently. But again, you can see now if you click on Andrew Smith, that just brings up his involvements in the UK. And if you click on Andrew Smith in New Zealand, that just brings up Andrew Smith's involvement in stuff that's in New Zealand. The next screen we've got is the meeting rooms. So this identifies all the different meeting rooms that we've been able to track. And again, if you want, you can filter by country. So for example, if we go in and we'll filter by Australia, and that then automatically, you hardly even see it happen, but then just brings you up the meeting rooms at Gospel Trusts that we've recorded in the different regions in Australia. Again, if you click on, for example, the Albury Gospel Trust, that will bring you up the address. The address might not be right because we have to go off what address has been filed public record. So sometimes the meeting room might not be at that location, or we might not have the full address. What we will have generally is the trustees. So again, you can see who the trustees of the Albury Gospel Trusts are. We can also see that the Lavington Gospel Trust shares the same address when it was registered. So again, if you clicked on the Lavington Gospel Trust, it would take you through to the people that are involved in that. And again, you can always click through and see what involvement, if any, what businesses these people have got. I'm going to get one here that hasn't got any. There we are. Nick Stead is a trustee of the Lavington Gospel Trust, and he is also a key person of Anchor Safe Systems. So that's the meeting rooms. Then we've got Bruce Hales's family. So you can see, again, all the businesses that the Hales family are involved in, and all the members of Bruce's family. Probably missing a few of the younger grandchildren off there currently. But again, you wanted to go and have a look at, for example, Cameron Hales. It would show you who his father is, who his mother is, who his wife is, and what his mother's maiden name was. So a little bit of information there. The charities, again, this basically is the meeting rooms and any other charities. So again, you can search in there. You wanted to look, for example, for the National Assistance Fund. You'll see the different ones. We've got one in New Zealand. We've got one in Denmark, one in Australia, one in the US, and one in the UK. There's actually two by the looks of it in New Zealand. So you can see the different charities there. Then the top influencers, these don't link into anything currently, but this was based off the information that we've got at Brethren Network, who actually who are the most senior people in the Brethren. So obviously you've got the Hales family along with Phil McNaughton up at the top, down to Lloyd Churnside, John Anderson, Caleb Hall. And in reality, these are most likely probably the top 20 definitely, down to probably 24, 30 are the people involved in the Global Advisory Panel. So the real senior members of the Brethren. There are a few other little things in here. There's a state search, other entities. So this is everything without the trading businesses included. Companies sold. So these are businesses that Brethren members have sold in the last 7 or 8 years. So you can see the different businesses that have been sold. We've got one, I think, in the US that was sold for near enough $200 million. We've got Unispace sold for $300 million. I believe the total for these businesses is $2 billion plus. Then a little bit about the Plymouth Brethren. And probably the next bit that I want to cover is really how you can add or amend to the network. So if you've got something that you want to add or you think that's missing from the network, if you click add or amend information, a little box will pop up and ask you to supply the info. And once a week we go in, look at what's been added, verify it, double check it, and then correct the Brethren network. And again, if you just want to contact us, there's a contact button in there as well.
This is incredible, Damian. This is going to solve so many of my questions that land in my inbox and people that are texting and messaging me. So that is so great that you're able to go through this one by one and show people actually how to use it. This is a massive wealth of information that it changes everything on how people interact and be able to have the knowledge that they need to what is really behind the whole PBCC network. This is incredible. Well done.
One thing I would kind of point out, because people are not familiar with the Brethren, might be puzzled as to what the relevance of all this business information has to a religious sect. Because if you were to do this for, say, the Baptists or the Presbyterians, it wouldn't really be meaningful because there's no particular connection between the Presbyterians' chapel and their religion and the businesses they might be involved in. But as an insider who's seen all this growing, as Damian pointed out at the beginning, the PBCC very much is a business more than it is a religion. And one of the key reasons that that's the case is that your status inside the church in terms of your spiritual influence is entirely dependent on your net worth. Or I should say it's dependent, number one, on your net worth, and number two, on what family you belong to, because of course the Hales family and the families that are connected by marriage with the Hales family also derive a huge amount of influence just from that biological connection, if you like. So that's why it's very relevant to put up a table of Bruce Hales and who his relatives and his descendants are, because in effect, it's a family business, and this is the family that owns the business. But secondly, in any Brethren congregation, you will find that there are one or two brothers who in fact run the congregation, who call the shots, who have the authority to, lift people up or push them down or punish them or dictate who lives where or who can do what. These will be the big business owners. They will be the two wealthiest brothers in that congregation. So it's very much a religion of business. I mean, money is their god, and Bruce Hales is his prophet.
Yeah, just to back that up, I'm not from a Brethren background. I've never been a member of the Brethren. When I look at it, if somebody asks me to name the two senior people in each location, I can do it. I also will say, and in particular for people inside, I don't think people inside realise the scale of what they're involved in. Yeah. I genuinely don't. And I think people that come out don't realise the genuine scale of this business. This is a business that, according to Strive 23, turned over, if you look at these circa 3,500 trading businesses, turned over $48 billion. In reality, if this was Bruce Hales Limited, Australia, it would be Australia's second biggest company.
And that's literally what blows the minds of those inside when we do these podcasts and reveal what we reveal, because they don't have access to this information, right? It's kept secret in there what really goes on. They don't have a clue. When we were doing podcasts only once a month, I had so many insiders reaching out of like, you don't understand how this is a lifeline for us. This is our lifeline. This is how we find out what's going on in there. And it is one of the reasons why so many years ago I had made a phone call back home to my parents, and I had to inform them of what was going on because I knew that they didn't understand, right? It wasn't received well, but it really is. This is how they get their information, is by what we uncover and are able to deliver back to them. Yeah.
Mm.
And I mean, there's a very good reason why the leaders of the church keep this financial information very close to their chest, and that is because multiple times a year they're going out cap in hand to all the members, pleading for money under the pretense that their school system is in dire need of funds, and if everyone doesn't give their last penny and scrape the barrel, then their, one school global is going to collapse. Well, the reality is they have vastly more money than they need. One of their biggest problems is what to do with all the money they've got. It's literally piling up in trusts and charities around the world. But unless they maintain this fiction that PBCC Incorporated is kind of on this financial cliffhanger, and unless the brethren stump up more and more money, the whole thing's going to collapse. They have to maintain that fiction in order to maintain the cash flow. I mean, having been inside the PBCC, there's this constant sense of financial crisis, and we must do another fundraiser, and we must, put aside more money out of our household budget to support the testimony, which is completely fictitious. It's the exact opposite of the truth. So I would say to people, brethren members inside who are listening to this, yes, if you're comfortably off, if you've paid your mortgage, if your children are well provided for, by all means, give money to the RRT, give money to One Focus. But if you've got a mortgage, if you're struggling to make ends meet, if you don't have any savings, but in fact your net worth is negative, don't give a penny to these UBT initiatives. They've got far more money than they need.
I would echo as well on the back of that, Richard, that at the care meetings, the monthly care meetings, where it's decided that $200, for example, is going to be sent to Lester Martin, Dean Hales, Greg Hales, or even other influential brethren members.
Yeah.
Think about it. If every gospel trust is doing that, that's probably $100,000 that's just going to land in that individual's bank account.
Yeah.
They don't need it. And to give you a couple of examples, one of the companies sold a sort of Australian and American company that was sold. The director sold that business for, we believe, or I believe, to be anywhere between $300 and $500 million. The following month, every care meeting, I believe, sent him $200 each, because obviously he was struggling.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that regularly occurs. It's crazy.
That saved him going to the food bank that week, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you guys coming on and going through all this. Damian, going through your website was absolutely what everybody inside needed, because they really wanted to understand how to go through it all and how to work the connections. So I appreciate with that. And I just want to reiterate to everybody with all of these RRT podcast series that we have done, that we are not negating the good work that RRT attempts to do. They do good work, right? And there are good humans in there that enjoy doing this. What we want to point out is the hypocrisy of the places that they go to without cleaning up their own backyard. I want to make it very, very clear that that is the issue that us ex-members have with this. Is that when we see a post where you are supporting Are You Okay, when there's thousands of us out here that have never been asked that. And I think it is absolutely hypocritical when you are attending events that are a direct contradiction with all of the things that our podcasts have exposed. That is our issue. So again, it's not that we are negating the good work that you all are doing. It's just clean up your own backyard first. And I'm going to end this podcast with more of our survivors, ex-members that have their own thoughts on the RRT. Here's that video. Until next time, everyone, take care. Much love to you all.
On the 10th of September, the RRT UK Facebook page posted about World Suicide Prevention Day. Anyone who knows me knows that this is a subject that's very close to my heart. Now, the post in question was about suicide in construction, which is a very important subject, and it is one that desperately needs addressing. There are far too many deaths by suicide in the construction industry. However, my point is this: in the post, it says behind every high-vis is a person that matters. So my question to the RRT and to the PBCC is this: what about those that aren't behind a high-vis? What about those that are in your community? What about those ex-members of your community? What about those members who have died by suicide within your community, and yet you refuse to admit that that's what it was? You hide the death behind some other explanation. How about admitting that that's what it was? Because the pressure of your community became too much. The trauma that members suffer becomes too much. Ex-members who have either died by suicide or have attempted suicide, do they matter? The hashtag in that post was #RRTcares. So let me ask you this: where's the care for those who have suffered at the hands of elders and priests from your community? Where's the care for those who have attempted suicide? Where's the care for ex-members who have attempted suicide because of the trauma they still carry? Where's the care for survivors of abuse? Ex-members whose perpetrators of abuse still carry on in the community and are protected by the community, and yet are never made to face justice because they can confess their sins and all is forgiven. Where's the care for the survivors of that abuse? The decades of mental health battles that they face for decades after. Where's the care for them? Where's the care for ex-members who have reached out when they're at that lowest point of thinking the only way out is to take their own life? Where's the care for them? And when they reach out to their brother, or their partner reaches out to their brother, and their brother's response is, "Do you think he meant it?" Or their own mother, who suspects that they've attempted suicide, but won't make the call herself. She has to get someone else to do it. Where's the care then? My question is this: if RRT really cares, why not start a bit closer to home and start looking into things that should never, ever have happened and should never, ever have been covered up and still continue to be covered up to this day?
The Rapid Relief Team, the so-called charity run by the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. They show up to wildfires, hand out burgers to firefighters, hand out water at marathons. Looks generous, right? Here's the catch: their own members can't do any of those things. Brethren can't become firefighters. They can't run in races. They can't even sit down and eat with you. So what is RRT really? A charity? Or is it a stage-managed photo op to make a secretive cult look community-friendly? They'll feed you, but never eat with you. They'll cheer you on, but never run beside you. That is not charity. That's hypocrisy.
I want to talk today about something that has left me absolutely reeling. The complete hypocrisy of the Rapid Relief Team partnering with charities around the world that focus on mental health. Because here's the truth. Behind the glossy branding, behind the staged photos of volunteers with smiles and sausage sizzles, lies an organisation, the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, that actively cause some of the deepest psychological harm imaginable. Ex-members like me know what it's like. If you dare to speak out about your lived experience, you're met not with compassion, but with shunning, gaslighting, and character assassination. Families are torn apart, loved ones are cut off, and the psychological scars run deep. For all those still trapped inside, anyone who doesn't conform, anyone who questions, anyone who simply doesn't fit the mould, they too suffer in silence under the weight of control and fear. So when the Rapid Relief Team stands shoulder to shoulder with mental health organisations, presenting themselves as champions of well-being, it is not just ironic, it is dangerous, because it paints a shiny, happy picture that hides the reality. It allows an organisation that causes deep psychological trauma to pose as if they're part of the solution. Let's be clear, true care for mental health means facing uncomfortable truths, not burying them under PR campaigns. It means listening to those who've been harmed, not silencing them. Until the organisation behind RRT confronts and takes accountability for the trauma it continues to inflict, these partnerships are nothing more than hypocrisy dressed up as charity. Because real healing can't happen in the shadows of silence. Darkness only thrives until someone shines a light on it, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
Hello, my name's Steve Simmons. I live in Auckland, New Zealand. I've been completely cut off from my family, my children, grandchildren, siblings, lifelong friends, all except for two of my children and one older sister, all of whom have also been excommunicated from the PBCC. My crime was to raise questions about fraud and persons who'd been treated with incredible cruelty after having been excommunicated from the church without any valid reason. Brethren spokesmen insist that the church doesn't divide families and that it's left to individuals to decide whether to have any contact with anyone who's been excommunicated. But that's just a gross misrepresentation of the reality. The teaching inside the church is that persons who've been excommunicated, especially those who've expressed any concern about doctrine or activities within the church, teaching is that they're poisonous and any unnecessary contact could kill you morally. In fact, the leader explicitly taught that it would be better to take your own life than to have to do with someone they regard as an opposer. And to back that up, I received a letter from leaders in Auckland about 18 months ago in which they told me, "You were withdrawn from for challenging and refusing to accept as right assembly judgments in other places and a refusal to accept witness. This was and is true and is further evidenced by your refusal to disassociate from Braid Bend. You clearly don't accept the way the brethren apply assembly discipline." And further on they say, "You know your wife will not and does not want to be beholden or connected to you on an ongoing basis. You know we have held for years that separation should be moral, physical and legal." So in the light of this, seeing the RRT shamelessly claiming to bring families together at Christmas time, that really bites. I've got grandchildren living very close to me who I've never seen, never even been sent a photo despite my requests. Not even criminals are treated like this by their families in the world around, except in perhaps some extreme circumstances. Excommunication in the PBCC is just a kangaroo court. They only listen to the prosecution, won't allow a defence, and then they pass a sentence of death, often when even no crime has been committed. They've put themselves on God's throne. They dish out eternal condemnation and follow it up with the most heartless cruelty. And the Rapid Relief Team is nothing more or less than a slick public relations exercise with one purpose, and that is to provide a veneer of charity and goodwill over a rotten core. To be strictly fair, 95% of the members have no idea what's going on in secret, and they're good people, but they're just hopelessly deceived. Also, I'm not denigrating any good that the RRT does, but if they were doing it according to biblical teaching, they'd do it quietly without any fanfare. So I'd just like to urge anyone considering engaging the RRT in any event to just have a look into the background, watch some of the videos, find out the truth about the church that's behind it before you make a decision. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Peter Hart. This TV article was aired recently on the main 6 o'clock news channel across New Zealand. It showed the Rapid Relief Team distributing fence posts and material to farmers in flood-struck areas in New Zealand. It left me feeling very sad and angry. This is a repeat of similar events RRT has pulled off in New Zealand. 2 years ago, when RRT invited the news to interview them, as they're always keen to do, they claimed to have donated 930 fencing packs valued at over $1.4 million. The interviewer quizzed the Brethren spokesperson intently about their generosity, saying that, well, $1.4 million is a lot of money. At no point did the RRT director say that they were simply distributing a government grant of $1.25 million. Furthermore, I know that the whole event has likely cost them nothing by the time you consider other sponsors of materials and the way donations from suppliers for the event can be used to offset tax. They could have even made a profit from it. This means a lot to me personally, because I was trapped in the exclusive Brethren Church knowing they were deceitful and crafty. I challenged them about similar untruths to the media and was finally challenged myself about my loyalty to the church and the so-called man of God. I refused to back down and lost my wife, children and grandchildren, whom I haven't seen or spoken to for over 5 years because of the extreme shunning rules and hatred for those who dare to challenge them. Please don't support RRT. They are purely a PR front for an extremist and dishonest cult.
Hello, my name's Rowan. So, why do people see red when they see social media posts from Rapid Relief Team? I mean, it's a good thing, right, that they're doing something for the community. Yet the almost universal reaction from ex-members ranges from something from disgust to even outright anger. So, what's going on? Well, one thing for me is I'm skeptical of the motivation. Rapid Relief Team didn't exist when I was in the Brethren up until 2011, but it started shortly thereafter, which just happened to be around the time when a Brethren entity in the UK was denied charitable status by the Charity Commission. So this would explain why they appear anxious to get media attention for their good works. I heard of one team member of a local RRT team whose role was media coordinator, so to notify the press and try to get as much media coverage as they can for an event that they were at. Now, that's not a crime to shout out your good works, but it's quite understandable when you see boasting about how they're doing good things for families or whatever, families in need, when for someone who themselves has been excommunicated and can't see their own family. And there's many personal things like that can trigger someone. But on the flip side of the whole RRT thing, I think young people that serving at these stalls, there's a growing discomfort and feeling of a bit of disgust in community and culture that they've been brought up. They're sort of starting to see through the hypocrisy of it.
If you are looking for more information about the Rapid Relief Team or the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, visit truthaboutrrt.com, pbccresearch.com, and brethrenexposed.com. Along with the Get a Life podcasts, these resources will help you make an informed decision about working with the Rapid Relief Team. We, as ex-members, are demanding that the RRT and the PBCC clean up their own backyard before presenting this facade. Charity work is needed everywhere in this world, but what we don't need more of are charities taking advantage of good people to cover up who they really are. How can you support Get a Life podcast? You can donate internationally via PayPal at www.paypal.me/getalifepodcast. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen that takes you to our GoFundMe. Every donation helps keep this project alive. If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. You can find all our Get a Life merchandise on our website at www.getalife.net. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.